Hey netball fans, so what did we think about that game? The first time we got to saw the new Saracens Mavericks squad out in action, and they did not disappoint. I think from looking at the game, you could tell that Surrey Storm had some tired legs out there, but in essence, there was just some really good stuff about Saracen Mavericks, which made it really hard to defend them. So going straight into it, Kadeen Corbin, Chloe Essam in the goal shooter and goal attack positions. It was just really, 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 really difficult to mark. Basically, Kadeen Corbin was on fire. She is a player, in my opinion, that has one of two games that she brings. She either brings fast, controlled, and accurate, or she can get a little bit under pressure and she can start to make mistakes. And then sometimes she goes a little bit too fast, not for her, but for the team around her. And what we saw today was absolutely world class from Kadeen Corbin. We saw controlled Kadeen. We saw speed when she needed it. I mean, she made it look sometimes like she was just playing on her own out there and that there was no defenders in sight. She'd drive out in that pocket and open up the space as Mavericks were coming down. Her movement in the circle was beautiful. She's got that change of speed, but the change of speed, change of angle, rolls. She can play the front, she can play the back. And she did it today, all controlled, and her team around her as well fed her beautifully. Chloe Essam as well. It wasn't just a single goal shooter putting up most of the work. Chloe Essam also did an awful lot of the work in the goal attack position too, which meant that they had both of them firing. When you've got both your goal shooter and your goal attack firing, happy days. You can't really ask for much more than that. And obviously you had George Lees and Sasha Corbin in the first quarter as well, bring the ball down. So it was difficult for Storm. They came out fighting, not going to lie. Bailey started to come out of the circle to start off with, and whereas the game before, where we saw Bailey exit early, we saw Kelly struggle with a little bit, that had already progressed from the last game, and Bailey exited and Kelly was running base. When Bailey was in, Kelly was running front, and it was really good. And they had the pressure as well of Raz Quashie and Joe Tripp on them, so it wasn't easy balls in there, but they were making it work to start off with. Mavs also threw in a zone in the centre third every now and then, and that really put pressure on Storm on bringing that ball through. Just some tired legs. I think what we found were that they were running with players on them. They weren't necessarily doing it enough to get free. We had them hiding a little bit. It was one offer rather than one offer and then another offer, and they were struggling to pull through. Mavs did like a diamond, well, more like a triangle zone, and they were struggling to pull anyone through the middle, so they were getting caught really wide. But that's all credit to Mavs, to be fair. And also Mavs did a good job on the centre pass. The first, especially right at the beginning of the game, the first phase centre pass, they were really putting double pressure on every now and then, and that was causing some issues. So we started off with Storm 10, Mavs 13. Can still go either way at this point, but Mavs look slick. As you get through, Yaz starts to fight. So Yaz Parsons at centre was starting to fight for the middle space a bit more in the second quarter, which worked well. Storm starting to do some give and goes through the court, which started to work well. But Mavs then just started to up the gear, up the pace, and they almost went into fifth gear, and they were just cruising. They were accurate in attack. They were accurate with their passes. Their speed was on point. They were driving for backball. They were cutting for the front, and a lot of the stuff coming through was uncontested. And they just literally ran away with it. And this is where the pressure almost seemed to be off in that defensive circle. And they took that quarter 16 goals to 7. So they pushed on massively at this point. Wholesale changes at quarter 3, lots of changes in Mavs, and then we had one change for Storm, which was Frankie Wells coming in at goal attack. I think this was a really good change. Frankie Wells just brought a little bit of experience, a little bit more stature in terms of getting some of the higher balls, considering that lots of them were behind, but also just a bit more game experience, I would say, in play. She doesn't have the speed that Kelly has, but what she does, she uses with a lot of experience and a lot of confidence. It was better by Storm this quarter. They started to really put a bit more pressure on at the end, pushing off the circle edge. What I'd like, they do like a triangle defence, and it turns into a box as well, not triangle, diamond, and it turns into a box as well. But sometimes they don't buffer players off that, so they're almost stood in the places where they don't want the players to get the ball, but they're not going on the ball that's going wide, or they're not encouraging the players into the same space. Sometimes it works beautifully, sometimes it's just a bit too loose, and it's really getting that balance of when you throw in a zone, how you're also being aware of the players and buffering them into the places that you want them to be in. Balls were going in better to Bailey, Karen Bailey, in this quarter, and there were better mid-court drives as well. And Storm actually took that quarter 13 goals to 10. So, I mean, that's credit to them as well. Obviously, we had changes, like I say, for Mavs. And then quarter 4, we had even more changes. And the thing is, when you are that many goals ahead, it's great for coaches because they can play all these young players without having to worry about the impact on the scoreline. And actually what it showed was that Mavs bench is the same as we saw from Team Bath when they played against Celtic Dragons. The Mavericks bench is really strong. These youngsters, as we call them, aren't weak players. They come on, they do a job. I mean, the classic example would be Clark coming on a goal shooter, Corbin going to goal attack. Clark was just so composed. She'd get the ball, shoot it, it'd go in, and she just looked as though, you know, it was just an average Sunday afternoon down at the park. She was just popping them up. And that is absolutely amazing. It's amazing as a coach to have that capacity on your first game, to be able to play your squad, see what they're like. But it's even more amazing the fact that it didn't drop the performance. They were still performing really well. And what was really clever by Kat Ratnapala as well is she actually moved players around so they had the more experienced players around them as well. We also saw, with 5 minutes left to go, Mickey Austin then started to change her team around more as well. So we had Humphreys come on and Sullivan come on. And I think they did a good job. Did they impact the scoreline? Not massively, but they didn't drop it either. So again, it shows that there is that versatility. I think what Storm was struggling with today was that defensive circle. They needed something stronger in defence. Priest did an absolutely amazing job against Pulse, but just struggled against the speed of Corbin, and they just didn't have anything really to go in there and match up against that. And that's something that they might have to look for moving forwards. But you know what, Mickey Austin is fantastic, so I'm absolutely no worries that she won't be all over that. She'll be absolutely all over it, and she'll be looking at how they can change that next time and how they can really silence Corbin. So your final score was 53-41 to Mavs. So that final quarter was a 14-11 quarter to Mavs. So most of the time, you know, they're just chipping away. Storm have obviously chipped away on one quarter, but it was really that quarter 2 that did the damage for Mavericks. So they'll obviously be looking at that and looking at what was the difference in their play quarter 2 to quarter 1. I don't think there was too much difference for them. I think Mavs literally put the accelerator on, but they need to make sure that they reflect and look at how they can stop that. Mavs, on the other hand, if you can get a quarter like quarter 2, they need to bring that now and bring that out in quarter 1 and be able to put the speed on right from the beginning, because when they start to step up against the Team Bath, or maybe even the Loughborough Lightnings from what we saw today, they're going to have to go with full strength to start off with. If Storm hadn't had the game yesterday, it may have been a different matchup. I think you could tell that Storm was a bit tired, like I say. And it could well have made a big difference in the game because of that fatigue. It is important. It does make a difference for players. And you've got to remember what we've come off the back of the last year and how much training these guys have potentially got behind them. And it's not just the training, it's also the match play. When you're actually playing in a competitive match, the tiredness, the fatigue, and the intensity is so much different. We try as coaches to replicate that in training, but it's really hard to replicate that complete competition intensity. And also, you know, with the youngsters that they've got in the Storm squad, absolutely all credit to Mickey Austin for bringing these youngsters through, but they might not have come up too much of this experience of having that back-to-back gameplay. So next time when they meet, if the fatigue isn't there, could it be a different story? You know what? I just don't know. Storm are a great team this year, and they are going to push every team they come across. It's just that quarter 2. That's just so annoying as a coach, isn't it? But yeah, great game. Really excited to see the next game as well. I hope you are absolutely loving this weekend of netball. I am loving it. I've literally abandoned the family. Enjoy the next game, and I'll speak to you afterwards.